We have the next 90 minutes to learn, share together, and there's going to be some workshopping about ideas of how you can inspire your students to find their purpose. Why the heck are they in your class? We're going to find the answer to that question. So without further ado, please welcome Lisa Young and Andrea Sharer.
Thank you so much for having us up to come talk to you guys about a topic that is very near and dear to our hearts. As Thatcher said, my name is Andrea Sharer. I am just now finishing my second year as full-time faculty at Scottsdale in the counseling department. So that entails two pieces. I meet with students one-on-one for counseling, but I also teach a strategies for college success class. My previous life before I was at Scottsdale, I was a high school counselor for 15 years. And then I spent 2 years at ASU teaching classes primarily to students who are on academic probation. So in all of my roles, I have thought a lot about purpose, why students do what they do, and when they stumble and when they struggle, why that is. And I think a common thing that I've noticed is this purpose piece, that if we can help students engage in this sense of figuring out why they're doing what they're doing, the end result is success. So that's a little bit about who I am, and tell you about
Well, good afternoon, everybody. We're going to work really hard to keep you all awake and engaged for the next hour and a half after lunch, which sometimes can be a challenge, but we promise we are up for the task. My name is Lisa Young, and I just got, last Friday, my 20-year pin for being residential faculty for 20 years. And it was my 25th year of teaching. And so in regard to purpose, what I can tell you is that up until August 15th, 1993, I never, ever considered being a teacher. It wasn't something I wanted to do. My best friend wanted to be a teacher. I didn't want to be a teacher. I wanted to be an astronaut. My purpose of wanting to be an astronaut, going to school for aerospace engineering, getting straight A's through high school and up until my junior year of college, and working really hard not to get into any trouble in my life was all about my purpose of wanting to be an astronaut. And things happened in my junior year of college, and my whole path changed. I became a hydrologist. So here I am today as a 25-year veteran educator talking about purpose with my background in hydrology. So that August 15th, 1993, my friend called me and said, "Hey Lisa, my brother is the division chair at Gateway Community College, and we just lost our program director for the water resources program, and you're the only person we know in the world who is a hydrologist. Will you teach?" Okay. So I walked in, so that was a Friday, I was hired to teach on Monday. How many of you have done that? Yeah, we know that story. Hired on a Friday to teach on a Monday, never taught a class, never was a TA. Walked into my classroom of 15 men, and I say men because they were all older than me, and fell in love with the craft of what we all do, which is educating people. And so I could tell you all sorts of things, but I'm an educator. I love what I do. I'm also a total water geek and a space geek. But what I love about what I do in our Center for Teaching and Learning is that I get to work with all of these brilliant faculty like you, like Andrea, in looking at how we can just continuously improve our students' experience. That's what we all want to do, isn't it? We want to help. Like, I think about my job. My job is about helping our students' dreams come true. And in 2 days, I get to go to graduation and celebrate all of the students. And you got to do that Saturday. And it's the best thing, isn't it? So that's my purpose, is helping our students' dreams come true. And this project, we're going to tell you a lot about it. It's really exciting. Hope you get a lot out of it, and that maybe you do some of these things in your classes. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Andrea.
So we'll tell you a little bit about ourselves today and our experience, because I think that's an important part of the journey in working with students, is understanding our own path towards understanding our own purpose We're going to weave those things together. Unlike Lisa, who has a very interesting background of wanting to be an astronaut, and she was a hydrologist, I was a student who, as a senior in high school, I took a psychology class, and I describe it as it felt like I fell in love. Psychology was it. I knew, I was fascinated, and I fell in love with it. But even knowing that was my major, I never changed it. But it even took me years of trying to figure out what I wanted to do with psychology. And our students all have that journey where sometimes they're all over the place and they want to be an astronaut, and then they're a hydrologist, and then they suddenly discover teaching. Other people know that they want to do something from the time they're little, but they still have a hard time pulling it all together in a way that's meaningful. So that's kind of what we've looked at and kind of the journey that we'll take you guys on today. And as you're thinking about that, I want you to think about for yourself, on a scale from 1 to 10, as you were getting ready to come here today, where were you in the process of knowing what you wanted to get out of the Summer Institute? So if you were a 1, it just means I signed up, it's the 13th annual, I always go, or I've never gone and I wanted to check this out, I'll just see what's there. Or were you a 10? Had you looked at the sessions and you knew what you were going to do and had a really well thought out plan for what you wanted to get out of your day? So just take a moment and think about yourself, where you would fall on that scale from 1 to 10. And then at your table, so if you are a small enough table that you can all talk, that's great. If you want to split in half and be 2 groups at your table, that's fine too. But I want you to kind of share your number with each other if you're comfortable with sharing that. But then why did you choose to attend? Why did you get out of bed and come here today? Why did you choose to attend? And what were and are you hoping to get out of today and tomorrow, out of the experience? So just take a few moments and talk with each other about kind of your sense of why when it comes to this particular event. So as you guys are thinking about this idea, any general thoughts from anybody on how it changes your experience of anything to come into it with a specific plan? So just anybody have any thoughts on any event, whether it is going to a social event, whether it is going to a conference, whether it is anything that you attend? How does your experience change if you think about the why beforehand? Okay. Yeah, so you set yourself, it's an expectation. And sometimes you are expecting something and you're pleasantly surprised. And other times, though, when you have some of those high expectations, there are times when sometimes you can be let down a little bit. Yeah, so it sets your level of expectation. Any other thoughts on how it might affect your experience to think through beforehand why you're doing what you're doing? Yes, thank you. And when you are more focused rather than meandering, what does that do?
Besides giving me direction, do I really need that? It's an offering, not a threat.
But it gives you that direction, right? It gives you that focus.
I'm sorry.
He's distracting you with that.
Yeah, he did. No, I mean, when you have focus, and to use your own terminology, you're developing your purpose. What do you want to have accomplished? I'm a list maker, so here's this thing I want to do, here's this next thing that I want to do, and if I don't think about it ahead of time, then I'm not going to be able to develop that list and follow through.
Right.
And so these are the common themes that we're seeing. So things like reason, purpose, growth, world, leading, help, intention. And so when I look at this, I can tell I'm in a room full of educators. Because that's why we're here. That's what we do. And as you have different groups of people, you'll see this change. So I'm going to turn this over to Andrea for a moment to talk about what purpose is in terms of our definition. But you've all pulled together a really great picture of what purpose is. And it's really exciting, and I have to tell you, it's an honor to be in a room with all of you, because this is pretty awesome. And how did you get a question mark in that reason?
And a smiley face in the O of the reason.
A smiley face, yeah.
So the question comes up, when I talk very intentionally with my students about purpose, that what is this thing called purpose? And all of the words that you guys collected are all a piece of what we're talking about. When I think about purpose, I really go back to the idea of what's my why? In any given moment, why am I here? And here could mean a million different things. Why am I in college? Why am I going to Yavapai College or Scottsdale Community College? Why am I in this class? Why am I in this career path? It could be bigger. Why am I on this earth? Purpose is both a sense of personal purpose, and it's the intersection of personal purpose with professional or academic purpose. But it's this ability to have an answer to the question of why. Again, back to why did I come to an event today? Thinking through that to have that direction. For some of our students, when they're thinking about their why, some of them have never, ever thought about it before. I pose a question early to my students in the semester. If somebody came up to you on the street and said, have you figured out your purpose in life? What do you think they're asking you, and what would you say? And they can come up with the definition, but so many of them go, oh, I'm not old enough. I'm not old enough yet to have a purpose in life, Like somehow, like on their 30th birthday, it will be revealed to them what their purpose is. And even in the clip we showed you, the kid who was 14 said, I'm 14, I haven't figured it out yet. I don't know, I haven't thought about it, and I haven't figured it out yet are very different questions. So to me, it's this purpose is an evolving, fluid chance to think about what's my why. Some students need to define their why. Other students have it in their gut. They just need a chance to articulate it. And that's what we've really learned in working with different people teaching different areas. Some of you work with students who know their purpose, but maybe they can't speak it yet. Maybe they aren't able to articulate it clearly. They know it in their gut, but they're not yet there. And others of us work with students who haven't even thought about the question. Mark Milliron wrote an article that Lisa's going to talk to you about in a minute, but I just want to tell you a part of what he talked about related to purpose. In talking about purpose, he says, no one can do this for you, yet it is almost impossible to succeed in education without being willing to do the hard work of asking why you're on the educational journey in the first place. Know the answers to the following questions. Who are you doing this for? What are your goals? What is your vision of how your credential will serve you? What is your overall purpose? Moreover, you have to own this purpose. It can't be a dream borrowed from a parent, a boss, a spouse, or a counselor. And here's my favorite line. It's far too easy to give up if that's the case. Learning is not an accidental journey. Knowing your larger purpose enables you to do what comes next. And I think that's a lot of what we struggle with our students is if they don't have an anchor in this sense of purpose, if they don't know their why, it becomes very easy to give up when it gets hard, which it will. Classes will get hard and life will get hard. And if they don't have a sense of what's my why am I here in this moment, big picture or little picture, it's too easy to give up.
So let me share a little bit about how Andrea and I got here today. Not driving up the 17, but the path that led Scottsdale Community College to this and to our work. And so in 2012, there are a couple copies of this article on your tables, and we also have built a website that we're going to show you that has links to it. So don't worry about getting it. We're providing it to you in many different modes. But in 2012, Mark Milliron wrote this open letter to students called You're the Game Changer in Next Generation Learning. Do any of you know of Mark Milliron? No. Oh, a few of you. So here's who Mark Milliron is. Mark Milliron was a student at Mesa Community College. Mark Milliron later became the president of the League for Innovation of Community Colleges. He also did a great deal of work with Western Governors University. In fact, he was one of the leaders of WGU, and now owns his own company called Civitas that does a lot in regard to dashboards and student success. He's one of the people who have coined this idea of 15 to finish to help our students meet their goals in regard to getting a degree in 2 years instead of 6 for Maricopa. I'm not speaking for Yavapai, but in terms of Maricopa and our community college, we're hoping to get them out in 2 years instead of 6. So he wrote this brilliant letter to students. And in this letter, he focused on 3 things: purpose, engagement, and tenacity. We do a lot with engagement. How many workshops have you gone to on engagement? How many of you have gone to a workshop on student engagement? Okay, I see a lot of hands. How many of you have heard of the work by Duckworth on grit and the work on mindset? Many of you. Tenacity, grit, mindset. But how many of you have heard much work up until today about purpose? A couple of you. There's not a lot out there. And so what happened was, we read this article and we were like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. We brought Mark Milliron to Scottsdale Community College, not once, but twice. We brought him in for all employees, faculty, staff, to learn about purpose, engagement, and tenacity. Then, as the CTL director, again, what was my why in having Mark Milliron come out? I wanted to be able to move this and make this part of our culture. So I had the ability to do that. I had conversations with Mark, talked to him, and I then brought faculty together on our Faculty Fridays, and we had some conversations about the article. Engagement was really easy to talk about. We had some amazing psychology faculty who did some work with us on mindset and academic grit. But when it came down to purpose, there wasn't much in terms of what I could share with our faculty. So I said to the faculty, okay, let's change this. There's not that much out there. Let's take care of it. Let's do it ourselves. So we applied for a learning grant. We have these wonderful learning grants. And one of the things we really try to focus on at Scottsdale is this whole idea of scholarship of teaching and learning and building communities of practice. So I asked for funding for 10 faculty. I got funding for 5 faculty. We all came together and we built this amazing community of practice around purpose. We did research. We have annotated bibliographies that we're sharing with you. Take it, make it your own, do whatever you can with it. We got those faculty together and we did so many different things in regard to studying purpose, developing interventions, and we're going to talk in depth about this, but developing these interventions and testing them, evaluating what level of purpose our students have coming into classes, going out of classes. We made a whole study of this. After that year, you know what happened? I didn't have any more funding. So what happened to the project? All those faculty said, sign me up. I don't need to get compensated. I want to do this. This is a great project and I want to continue it, which was, woohoo, yay. And so we've been continuing this work. We have years now worth of data that we'll be sharing with you today on this project. And so it came out of this idea that we wanted to develop that community of practice. We wanted to study purpose. We wanted to evaluate, develop, and foster that sense of purpose across the college. And that's what we're working on doing, and now we have an opportunity to share that with you all. So in regard to that, here is our process. So we got funding for 1 full year, July 1 to June 30th. And so the first thing we did was a literature review. We went out there, we wanted to see what's out there in regard to purpose and developing a sense of purpose for our students. Again, it's available to you. We then developed a survey, and the survey is in your...
You guys have this. It's the orange sheet that's on your table.
In that orange sheet, you'll see a survey a pre-survey and a post-survey that we designed. The pre-survey was given first week of class. The post-survey was given at the end of class. Imagine that. But I want to bring your attention to a couple of the questions. The first question, how would you define the following? Personal purpose, professional purpose, and class purpose. And we asked our students to do that. In 5 very different disciplines: counseling, justice studies, communication, college success strategies, and geology, and nutrition. That's the 5th one. So 5 really different types of programs and classes. We asked these students this question. We then asked them, hey, do you think having a clear sense of purpose impacts your motivation and success in college? Let's get them thinking about this. Let's have our students reflect on this. And these were all open-ended questions that most of them, that the faculty then evaluated. We used word cloud technology and such to identify some of those trends. Number 6, what is your primary reason for going to college? And we had from I don't know, to my parents are making me, to I have really clear goals, I know exactly what I want to do. And then 7, what motivates you to come to class? I know what motivates me to go to work every day. It's the awesome people that I work with and the work. Plus, it's really nice to get a paycheck too. But most days, I would do my job no matter what, but don't tell my boss. And so we really wanted to get into these questions. And then when you get to 9 through 12, it's all about SEC. We wanted to get information about why students are coming to SEC. What do they like? What don't they like? They don't like the Wi-Fi.
It's abundantly clear.
Yes. And then from 13 to 14, we asked them about their goals. We wanted to know at the beginning of class, what are your goals? What are you thinking? And Andrea actually recommended question 15, which I can't wait to tell you the results later because this is the coolest thing. But do you see a connection between this class and your major, your career, your personal happiness, or other classes this semester? So we asked these students these questions at the beginning of the semester. We really wanted to know. And then we asked many of these questions at the end of the semester, as well as, did the class or instructor help you determine your purpose or clarify it? Did the course influence the direction of your educational goals? And whenever I tried to pull these communities of practice together around scholarship of teaching and learning, there's a lot of, we all know, there's some areas that this would have been a slam dunk. College success strategies, slam dunk. Being a hydrologist, geology is awesome to me, and I would take geology classes all the time if I could, but geology is a class at our college that we don't have majors very often in geology, and it's just a science class that they have to take to get their degree. And that's what, when I asked the faculty member to be on this group, that was their response. Students don't have any purpose in taking my class. They just have to do it to get the requirement. And so we really wanted to find out, did this course do anything for you? Like, is it really like you tell the instructor it's a waste of time? That's how the instructor feels? Like, what's the deal? And then, was there a particular assignment or assignments that helped you develop your sense of purpose? Because we were developing these interventions, we wanted to know what was sticking and what maybe we didn't want to stick. And so we developed this survey, we put it out to the students, and when that's out to the students, we're developing these interventions in this fall semester, trying to get as many out as we could for the fall semester and then for the spring semester so we could really study it. And we had some really cool interventions.
So with the interventions, that was really for us, part of the project that was really fascinating was this opportunity to get people together from very diverse disciplines who all had the goal in common that we wanted students to be successful. But we were dealing, again, with very different students with very different needs, and we would get together and talk about, okay, how can we implement these interventions? And our conversations really seemed to lead us to the decision that it's all about giving students the space and place to really think about and reflect on their purpose. Most of us as adults live very busy lives, and so do our students. They go from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. And without being given designated time to think about purpose, whether that, again, is big life purpose or just simply, what was the purpose of today's class? If students aren't asked to think about, what did I learn today and what was the purpose, they won't. Not because they don't want to, not because they don't think it's important, but because they're off to the next thing and their attention is distracted by their phones or the next responsibility or life. So that was really what we came up with, was this idea that the interventions all have in common, that it's just giving students the space and place to reflect on this. One of my students many semesters ago said, learning without reflecting is like eating without digesting. And I don't know if they read that somewhere or if they really came up with that, but I thought that idea was very interesting, that we go and we learn and we learn and we learn, but if we don't take time to think about it, it goes through us. So we all kind of came up with some interventions. And so in nutrition, the interventions that were tried, he had a professional portfolio that students did, and he really asked them to think about their personal and professional purpose and how that made a direct connection into their career choice. And he used a daily reflection slip as kind of an exit ticket for every class. And so he would ask students, what was the purpose of today's lesson? And they would actually write it down. And what questions do you have remaining? At the end of every class, he gave them those 5 minutes to think about what the purpose had been and to ask any remaining questions that they had so that he had a sense of what they'd learned and what they hadn't learned. We had another instructor use this technique too, and some of you may have used this with the triangle, the circle, and the square. The triangle being the 3 main points of today, the thing that's still circling around in your brain, and what you feel really squared up about. But this idea of ending every single class before they even leave, giving them a chance to think about what the purpose of the class was, and then big semester pulling it into a portfolio. In communications, this was a really great way of contextualizing the idea of looking at purpose. He had taught his students conflict management, conflict resolution, communication skills, and then he gave them the prompt. Okay, you have a friend who's thinking about dropping out of college. How are you going to communicate with them? How might you use your conflict resolution communication skills to talk to a friend to maybe convince them that they should stay in college? And through that process, they were able to actually think about their own purpose, why they think college is important, why they think they should stay if things get hard. So we contextualize purpose into this idea of using conflict resolution communications. Geology. We always like to say that our geology instructor, she totally rocks, right? That's the bad pun. But because she really was the one who had probably the most challenging job. How do you infuse purpose into geology for the reasons that Lisa had talked about? She feels like all of her students are like, why are you here? Because I have to be, it's a required class. And you know, she was up against that and she struggled with coming up with a way of making it real. But what she did was she had students who were not geology majors start to think about how geology affects their life. She had them do a project where they could think about the footprint that they're leaving and how could they reduce the footprint and their impact. And they had to use the EPA website to actually learn different facts about things and what they were doing and how they could make a difference. And for the first time in her career, she had her students break into small groups and talk about these things with each other. And she was scared of that because she'd always had a lecture format to her class, and it always felt like if I get them into groups to talk about the real-life applications of geology, they're going to sit there like a rock, you know, and say nothing. But they loved it, and they had some of their best classes. And she said that semester she had students making comments like, it hasn't made me want to be a geology major, but now I understand better the earth that I live on. And that's really kind of what we're looking for students to get. Our administration of justice instructor, his assignments were very hands-on. He did 2 things. One was he would bring in guest speakers who would talk about their purpose journey. Did they always know they wanted to go into this career? He kind of asked them that. When was it that you started thinking about purpose and why you wanted to do this? And how did your life change? And how did you get here? And it's so valuable for students to hear that we still struggle with those questions. It's so valuable for students to know that it isn't always as easy as it might look for us when we're standing in front of the classroom and it seems like we've got it figured out. But he also would have his students do mock DUI arrests, and he would actually have them wear uniforms. And actually he said that he would see a change in them when they could really physically feel their purpose with the hands-on activity of being in a uniform and having some of the power associated with the role. They started to get a sense whether or not this was something they wanted to do as a career. For my class, like Lisa said, it was relatively easy. I have infused purpose into my class from the start. In Strategies for College Success, I don't know how you couldn't address some version of purpose. But what I did is I made it much more intentional. And I had very direct conversations. And every assignment that I gave, I would tie it back to purpose specifically. I had them read the Mill Iron article and reflect on that. They've always done an education autobiography. Tell me the story of you as a student. But I would ask questions like, what do you think the purpose of an education is? What do you think your own purpose is, and how do those connect? Getting them thinking about their future career and how that might tie into their own sense of personal purpose. When they're researching the career that they want to do, I had them think about, okay, you're sort of at your own funeral. It's your funeral. It's your eulogy, and somebody's talking about you. What do you want them to say about the contributions you made through your career over the course of your life? What difference do you want to make? Kind of thinking about it in this way of what really matters. And there's towards the bottom, you'll see the term a meaningful work statement. I tried to move away from students just saying, okay, I want to be a blank. You know, for a student who's undecided on a career, it's great to get to that place, that I want to be a whatever. But really, can they answer the question why? I want to be an architect, why? What is it about being an architect that is going to be meaningful work for you? So we went through a specific process where they would think about their values and their personality and their interests, and they would put that together into a statement that didn't actually even name a career. It was more a statement of what brings meaning to my life. And then they could think about that statement in the context of the career that they're going to do. Will this career bring that meaning to my life? Because that's really what we want. You know, Lisa made the comment that, you know, for the most part, she'd do her job if she wasn't being paid because it brings meaning to her life. And that's really, at the end of the day, when people feel good about their choice. And so those were some of the strategies that I used in my college success class. So you probably already do this. So that's one thing I want you to think about now. I'm going to give you a chance to think and maybe jot some things down, talk in small groups at your table. What do you already do, formally or informally, to engage your students in thinking about their purpose? When they ask you, why am I taking this class? When they ask you, why do I need to know this? When they're having those days where you feel like you're looking out and the entire crowd looks like this, you know, what are you already doing to engage your students on this topic? How do you help them see the purpose of your class? So whatever feels right to you, if you want to jot some things down for yourself so you don't forget or talk about it in small groups, take about a minute or two or think about what you're already doing. So in the spirit of the workshop aspect of this, and to get you guys actually putting some things down in writing, your pink sheet that you have at your table, this is actually something that we're going to have you jot down some ideas that you have about interventions, things that you actually want to incorporate into your classes as you move forward, ways that you might, and again, it might just be formalizing what you already do. Some of you might already do a lot on this topic of helping engage your students with a sense of purpose. But there's a place for you to actually put your name on this, and we're actually going to have you give these to Thatcher so that he can check back in with you and see how the work is going. So on the pink sheet, after thinking about what you already formally or informally do in your classroom and hearing some of the ideas for purpose interventions used by others, think of and share 2 things you plan to further develop or incorporate into your instruction. How do you plan to do this? And what's the outcome you're expecting? You know, and it doesn't have to be specific, but just why, you know, kind of what's your why in incorporating this? How do you think it's going to help you in your classroom? How is it going to help your students? So sharing 2 brief ideas. Going to have you actually write those down, and then we're going to ask for some volunteers to share some ideas that they have that might be ideas that other people have. So take a couple of minutes and write down a couple of ideas, and then we'll share with the big group.
Follow through purpose.
Right.
Like you didn't know that you didn't need this, and now that you've experienced.
What are some of the things that you would like to try to incorporate into your own classrooms in the future?
So in a writing class, I think now writing has really changed because of the internet, and we have social media, and it just kills me to read a Yelp review or an Amazon review that's just horribly written. Yeah, exactly. A grammar book. Yeah, it's good. So my idea is to sort of integrate that type of writing into the course. So instead of just writing these essays that they'll never write again, when will a student write a comparison contrast essay in their life? Again, after English 101. So if I could incorporate along with those types of, those modes, some more purposeful writing, I think it might be helpful.
Yeah, great, thank you. Yes, thank you, yes.
I have a questionnaire. This is for people going to nursing or medical assistant. So it's a healthcare survey. So I give this to the students first day, and there's questions about why do you want to be a healthcare professional? What do you want to achieve? Qualities of a healthcare professional. So there's questions about are you dependable? Are you time-oriented? Are you, you know, there's questions that would say this is what this type of job is, to see how they evaluate themselves currently. Ask them what their goal in life is, short-term, long-term. So I'm asking them questions so that are around about if you'd be a good fit for healthcare, so they can try to figure that out. What I haven't done is included the word purpose, which I will add.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think it's one of those words that the more often that they think about it in a wide variety of sources, if they come to see their counselor and their counselor says, what's your purpose in life? They're like, yeah, what's my purpose in life? But if they start to hear it in other arenas, if it's something that is thought about and talked about and reflected on across disciplines, that was what we found to be a very unique experience when we were creating these interventions, was how do you infuse this across disciplines so that it's not just a buzzword in one place, but it's something that they're really thinking about, how does all of this connect together? How do each of my classes connect to each other, and then to my greater purpose as well? We had asked our faculty kind of this question too, and I had a student who, to wrap up the intervention piece, he said, in dealing with students, I want to continue to focus on caring about their purpose, their dreams, and their needs. I used to think of my role as teaching skills needed for employment and financial success. I now view my job in a way that I think of teaching skills as secondary, and my primary job is to care about the people that come to me for the help and to give them the best that I can. And what I liked about that is that I think we do a better job of teaching them the skills that they need when we understand what they need. And so when we understand their purpose better and how they see their purpose and where they're going, when we understand them as individuals, it allows us to teach them the skills that they need in a way that's more relevant to them, in a way that's more real to them. So it's just kind of a shift in thinking. We all do this. We all have them think about purpose. We all do these different interventions, but this was a part of what we did in our project, was the hard work of thinking, okay, yeah, it makes sense. Students need to understand their purpose, they need to articulate their purpose, but how can I do that in my classroom? And that was part of that process for us. So we wanted you guys to have the opportunity to really start the process of thinking about interventions that you might be able to incorporate into your classes to help your students better learn the skills that you're teaching them. And then we had some results.
Yes, we did. So I'm going to see, does this work? Oh, it does. Love it when technology works. So we wanted to really look at how did this impact the instructors, our faculty, and how did this impact our students? We did this. Did it make a difference? And we have a really cool culture at SCC where it's okay to try something and fail, but we didn't want to fail. And there's nothing worse than, like doing all this work and then being like, wow, it made no difference at all. But that's not the case. So that's why we're here. So with our faculty, here's what they shared with us. They basically shared that they had increased engagement. As you heard about, like with the geology class, that faculty member really, I think it was a couple things. It was where she was being funded to try something new, but also she had the encouragement and the support of a cadre of faculty to try something. We met every 2 weeks for the fall semester to develop the survey, to plan the interventions, to talk about them. And so for this faculty member to try something new, she was very supported. We talked about it. We talked about how, if you try this, what could happen? What could happen that's great? What could happen that's not so great? What if they really don't talk and they just sit there for 15 minutes? Well, then that's what happens, But we really prepared her for it, and it was really life-changing for her to try that new, for her, way of teaching. And so she had increased engagement with her students, and as did the other faculty. They found that the students were getting a deeper understanding of the content. And like you said about math, they were really getting an opportunity to rethink about how their classes were, how they were teaching their courses, and how they could make things somewhat more relevant even. They got to know their students better through these surveys. If you ask your student what their purpose is, if you ask your student, which do you think is more important, making money or your happiness? You get to know your students. If you ask them, what makes you excited to come to class? Why do you come to class? Why SCC? Why your college? That's going to answer a lot of questions, and you'll know a lot more about your students. And if you actually use that information in your conversations with your students are like, wow, they actually read that. They know me. They care about me. And that makes a world of difference for our students also. And they found that their students were doing some reevaluation of their careers. So here's what we got. 96% of our students said that yes, they think having a clear sense of purpose impacts their motivation and or their success in college. Now, we have a couple different years and versions of our data. So the N for that was a pre-survey. We had 207 students respond to that. When we asked them, hey, what's your primary reason for going to college? This is really telling, and this can be very informative for the entire college, not just the faculty who are participating in this community of practice. 18% of the students in this 200 out of the 211 stated, my parents or guardians are making me attend. 1.5 don't know. That's almost 20%. So what do you do with those students in that classroom when 20% of them aren't there because they really want to go at all? We've been there. Haven't you been there? I've been there. 58% want to earn an associate's degree to gain admission to a 4-year institution. And again, I know these don't add up to 100 because it was multiple answer. If you're at math and you're like, whoa, what happened there? But 58% said they wanted to earn an associate's degree so that they can go to a 4-year college. 50% said that they're searching for purpose and what to do with their life. So half of them said, I'm searching, help me. Pretty much, that's why they're coming. And 51% wanted to get training so that they can get a job. Similar, would you say? Yeah. So then we asked them, what are your goals at SCC? You know, I like the word maps. The word clouds, you can tell, huh? It's the geographer in me. That was a joke. I'm not very funny, so I have to tell you when I'm trying to be funny. But they want to, just as we saw before, they want to graduate, they want to transfer, they want that associate's degree, they have goals. They want to finish. That tells us a lot, doesn't it? 52% of them said, yes, the class or the instructor helped me clarify my purpose. So when we set out for this, what we heard is that we really reached half of them. Some of them already knew what they wanted to do, and they didn't need that clarification. Some we weren't able to reach. They don't know yet. But 52%. 55% said that it influenced the direction of their educational goals. We did pretty okay work, I think. And this is what is the coolest. This makes my heart sing and is all about what we do. 100% shared with us after this that they think having a clear sense of purpose impacts their motivation and or success in college. So we taught them about purpose, we had them define it, we helped them think about it for an entire semester. A couple students had 2 classes. We didn't realize that we'd have crossover, but when they went to do their surveys and they went to submit a second one, they were like, whoa, I can't submit it. So we had some that got double doses of purpose in that semester. But then, when we asked the students, do you see a connection between this class and your major? From the beginning of the semester, the pre, to the post, 28% increase in, yes, I see a connection between the class and my major. 35% said, yes, I see a connection between this class and my career. And this is what gives me goosebumps, quite literally. 14% said, I see a connection between this class and my personal happiness. Now, I want to have my students' dreams come true, but I never would have guessed that what I do in the classroom impacts their personal happiness. You know, that's a pretty lofty goal. But our faculty increased that, and that's really pretty cool. So that's what we did. And we're proud of the work that we did and hope that you'll get to do some of that too.
And as we're starting to wrap up, because I think we're about 10 minutes from 2:30, to kind of put a bow on everything, Just some thoughts on this, I'll throw this out to the group. Do you think that having a well-articulated sense of professional purpose makes you a better educator? Okay, and I see some shaking of heads. Any elaborative thoughts on this? Maybe to add the how. How or why do you think it matters that when you come to the classroom, that you have a well-articulated sense of your own professional purpose? Why or how does that make a difference for your students? Right, they read us, right? They read us. And so when you're doing something that allows you to understand why you're doing what you're doing and the hard work that you're doing, and you feel more positive, you bring that positive energy with you to class, and it's contagious, and they feed off of that. And it's also something, again, when we ask our students to do something, there's a lot of a credibility issue of saying that we're doing it ourselves as well. So the positive energy that comes out of that. There were a lot of head shaking yes. The how and the why. Oh, thank you. We got another one.
I think that we all as faculty members have the kind of required purpose that's in the learning outcomes that it, defines our subject matter. But I think all of us as educators, we have kind of a tacit, unspoken purpose that's also part of the learning outcomes that we want for our students. For example, for me, one of my biggest purposes always is to see students gain confidence in themselves. Students, they interact with other people, gain friends, and feel like at the end of the class you have colleagues, you're connected to the campus community, and that you're a family in that class. And I think articulating that purpose more, in addition to the learning outcomes that we're legally bound, sometimes through articulation agreements, sometimes through outside accreditors and other things. Those are our purposes, but we have other purposes. And if we articulate those to ourselves, then we'll be watching for those in the classroom and say, see, remember at the beginning of the semester when you wouldn't even stand up and say this, but now you do, and look how far you've come. Pointing out your purposes helps them realize that, yeah, I've come a long way, and they can see how they've gained purpose in their own lives through your class.
Right, by identifying our purpose, it allows us to allow them to identify their purpose. And like we said earlier, when you establish your why before you come to class, before you come to a workshop, it directs your focus. What do you pay attention to? What do you look for to see if you met that outcome? Any other thoughts on the how or why this matters? If you think back to the question at the beginning that we asked about, how much had you thought through your purpose in coming today, and how does it affect you when you go into any experience with a well thought out sense of why? It directs your focus, it directs the direction that you go, it affects what you pay attention to. And so the question at the bottom is, thinking about how often you should revisit, and allow for an evolution of your professional purpose. It changes over time. And what I think is beautiful about education is that we get beginnings and ends not just even every year, even every semester. And there's a real, I think, beauty in that it comes to a close, and you can think back and reflect, and then you can think about going forward how you're going to make it better. And that's the last thing that we'll kind of talk about. And we have an activity for you at the table, but I'm just going to let you talk about it for a few minutes amongst yourselves. But this idea, it's on the, what color paper is that? But it's this idea of setting an intention. We normally think about New Year's resolutions as being a January 1st thing, but I think for educators, the new year is August, right? That's the educator new year. So as you're wrapping up one year and you're thinking about your new year resolution, what's your intention? And you don't have to write it down because we're short on time, and I want to give you time to talk to each other. But what's if everybody at the table or in a small group could share an intention, something that you have to revisit and refine your own sense of professional purpose with the goal to allow you to be the best educator you can possibly be? What's an intention that you have? What's a resolution that you would like to make?
You need to use it.
So true.
No, that's the thing is that you have to figure out, and are we all radiology? Oh, that's awesome. When I was a Gateway, they had.
And one thought just that I would like to throw in as we start to wrap up from my own experience, because we all of you guys embed student success strategies into your classes, right? We spend a lot of time. How many of you fight procrastination with your students? You want them to have a good work ethic. You want them to put the time in. We spend a lot of our energy trying to teach certain skills like don't put off your work, and after a while we feel like we've said it a million times and it's going in one ear and out the other. I truly believe that once students start to connect to their purpose, procrastination becomes much less of an issue. Now, as adults, do any of us still procrastinate? Right, we still do, but we've actually learned to do it better, right? We typically don't have some of the same crisis moments as our students do, because we know what's really important, and we know what are the things that we can maybe put off for something else. We become more strategic procrastinators, but I think it's because those of us who have found our purpose, we know it's not hard to get up in the morning and come to work. It's not hard to get the things done we need to get done because we love doing it. When you're doing something you love, some of those general, here's all the things you need to do to be a good student, they fall into place a little bit easier. So if you're thinking about time and how would I have time to incorporate in purpose interventions, it might be a trade-off. It might be that if at the beginning of the semester you do a little bit of purpose work in your class, things might run more smoothly down the road, and you might have to do less of the getting them back on track, some of those other things that end up taking up some time and energy. So there's a little bit of a trade-off, too, in the focus. And that's something I definitely notice in the student success realm.
So we're coming to a close of our time with you. And so we wanted to tell you what's next. So one is that we're working on our Google site. Now is the time to take out that purple piece of paper or those Canvas notepads and write down that URL. That's
or
got
your
everything.
Phone, right? They could take
or phone, yep, take out that phone so that you have that URL. I'm going to show it to you in just a minute. We do want to dive deeper into the data and start looking at persistence data from one semester to the next semester on the students who saw increase in purpose and what happened with like courses and things like that in terms of retention and grades. And we've applied for another grant to get students involved more in the purpose. So the students are involved as a recipient of these interventions, but really engaging them in some of the purpose of our service learning, our co-curricular activities, and having them help us to help students develop that purpose. So let me show you the website so you can get a quick look at it.
And while Lisa's pulling that up, the student involvement piece circles back to Mill Iron. This was an open letter to students, and it basically says, well-meaning adults in education forever have been trying to tell you things, but we need to hear your voice. We need to know what you think. We need you to have some skin in the game. So our next idea is to say, okay, students, you tell us what helps you develop a sense of purpose.
And so this is just some background information. Then we have the research, which is a link to Dr. Milliron's article, and then a number of journal articles and books and college programs related to purpose that we investigated. And we have detailed information on the interventions for each subject matter. Some information on the results, which the presentation had more information that we'll be updating.
Okay, let's give it up for Lisa and Andrea. So good.